Corporal Mason Briggs was no stranger to weapons. In his 5 years with the Navy SEALs, he had handled everything from M4 carbines to M249 machine guns, even a few relics of foreign make that had been smuggled in during joint operations. Every weapon had its quirks, its idiosyncrasies, and Mason knew them all. But nothing had prepared him for the Barrett .50 cal that someone had left on his workbench that morning. It wasn't listed in the Armory manifest. No paperwork, no signatures, no record of its arrival. The serial number, a critical identifier, had been painstakingly scratched off, and the thick black dust coating the stock suggested it had not seen action in years. Yet the barrel gleamed as if it had been polished only yesterday. Something about it didn't make sense, and Mason could feel that prickling sensation in the back of his neck that told him he was about to uncover something dangerous. He ran a microfiber cloth along the underside of the barrel to remove the dust and grime. That's when he saw it, a faint, etched number carved so subtly it could have been mistaken for a scratch. 13-7. His stomach twisted. The moment his fingers brushed the mark, Mason's mind raced. He had heard whispers about black operations weapons, the ones so secret even SEAL teams didn't know about them, but those were rumors. Urban legends. Stories meant to make rookies tremble at the thought of handling a rifle, so lethal it could erase a building with a single round. And yet here it was, right in front of him. The number didn't match any standard military code he had ever seen. 13-7. Simple, yet deliberate, like a warning or a signature. Before he could process it further, the workshop door banged open. Mason spun around, expecting perhaps one of the other techs, but instead, it was SEAL Chief Donovan Hale, a man whose reputation alone could quiet a room. Hale's eyes scanned the rifle as if he had known it was there all along. His usual calm, ironclad composure was replaced by something Mason had never seen, unequivocal tension. "Where did you get that?" Hale's voice was low, dangerous, laced with the kind of authority that could stop bullets in midair, or at least make a man freeze in place. Mason opened his mouth. It was just here when I... "Briggs," Hale cut him off, stepping closer. "Don't touch the number again." Mason swallowed hard, his palms suddenly clammy. The command wasn't casual. Hale's hands rarely trembled, but now Mason noticed the faint quiver in his fingers as he hovered near the barrel. "You don't understand," Hale muttered more to himself than to Mason. His gaze lingered on the etched number, eyes narrowing, jaw tight. Not yet. Mason had been in firefights that made soldiers vomit. He had seen men break under pressure, seen his brothers in arms pushed to their limits and beyond. Hale, however, had always been unshakable. The man's gaze alone could command respect or fear. And now, seeing him like this, Mason realized that whatever this rifle represented, it was serious, deadly serious. Trying to shake off his growing unease, Mason asked, "Chief, what does 13-7 mean?" Hale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he paced the workshop in slow, measured steps. Every tap of his boots echoed against the concrete floor, a drumbeat that made Mason's heart pound in rhythm. "It's a marker," Hale finally said, voice barely audible. "Not for the weapon, not for you, for someone else." Mason frowned. "A marker for who?" Hale stopped packing abruptly, standing so close that Mason could smell the faint scent of his aftershave mixed with the tang of oil from weapons. "For the man who used this rifle," Hale said, the words dropping like stones into Mason's gut. The implications hit him like a thunderclap. "You mean a sniper?" "Not just any sniper," Hale said, his tone grim. "One of the best we've ever had, but he disappeared, not officially, not in any record you can trust. And that number," he shook his head, "it wasn't meant to be found." Before Mason could press further, the workshop's alarm blared. A shrill, unforgiving wail that shattered the morning calm. Red lights flashed overhead, casting jagged shadows across the walls and the rifles lined up neatly on the racks. "Unauthorized armory access," the loudspeakers crackled. The words were mechanical yet filled the room with urgency. Weapon code, Barrett variant, unknown serial. Mason's stomach plummeted. They weren't being paranoid. Someone somewhere had just realized that this rifle was here. Hale's hand shot to his hip, fingers brushing the holster of his sidearm. "Get your gear, Briggs," he ordered. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed a storm behind them. "We move now." Mason fumbled with the canvas covering the Barrett. It was heavier than he expected, the weight of it pressing down on him like a warning. Hale grabbed the other end and they carefully lifted it together, moving toward the service truck. Mason's mind raced. Who could have known about the rifle, and why? As they exited the workshop, Hale muttered again, almost to himself. If they've tracked this far, we're already in the crosshairs. Outside, the morning sun glinted off the metal roof of the armory. A light breeze stirred the air, rustling the dust motes that danced like tiny specters in the beams of sunlight. Mason tried to shake the feeling of being watched, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood straight. The base should have been calm, orderly, mundane. Yet every instinct screamed that something unseen, something trained, was observing their every move. He glanced at Hale, who had not spoken since the alarm. The chief drove with steady hands, eyes scanning the perimeter through mirrored sunglasses. Mason noticed Hale's normally rigid expression had softened ever so slightly, an almost imperceptible grimace of concern. "Briggs," Hale finally said, breaking the silence, "you need to understand this rifle isn't just a weapon, it's a message. Whoever left it here wanted it found, and now that it's found, we are part of it." Mason's pulse quickened. He had heard about operations that were blacker than black, missions so classified that even SEAL intelligence officers had no clearance. He had never thought he would stumble into one with a rifle in his hands. Before Mason could ask another question, Hale slowed the truck, eyes narrowing. Something or someone was ahead. At first, Mason saw nothing. Then, from the shadows at the edge of the base road, he noticed movement, a figure standing perfectly still, watching them. It was impossible to tell details, but Mason felt the weight of those eyes, unseen yet palpable. The figure did not wave, did not signal, simply stared, silent, intent. His chest tightened. Something about the way the figure moved or didn't move made Mason's skin crawl. He turned to Hale. "Chief, someone's there." Hale's jaw tightened. "I know," he didn't slow. "They've been waiting for this." The figure tilted its head slightly, acknowledging them or warning them. Mason's breath caught. Hale didn't flinch. But Mason could see the tension in his hands, the faint tremor as he adjusted the grip on the steering wheel. The truck rolled forward, tires crunching gravel, leaving a thin dust trail behind. The figure remained. Then, as they drew closer, the shadows swallowed it completely. One moment the watcher was there, the next gone, vanished without a sound, leaving Mason with a creeping, icy certainty. Whoever, or whatever, had left the Barrett here was far more dangerous than he could imagine. Mason glanced down at the canvas-wrapped rifle. He felt a strange heat radiating from it through the fabric, a pulse in its weight that seemed almost alive. The number etched beneath the barrel, 13-7, pressed against the back of his mind, nagging, insistent. He could feel it, a dark code calling out to him. Hale's voice cut through the storm of Mason's thoughts. "Briggs, don't let curiosity get the better of you. Not this time. This number, this rifle, it changes everything." Mason nodded, swallowing hard. He wanted to ask questions, he needed to understand. But deep down, he knew the chief was right. The Barrett wasn't just a weapon, it was a key, a warning, a line drawn in the sand. And whatever was waiting for them out there, watching, tracking, ready, would not forgive mistakes. As the truck disappeared down the gravel road, the morning sun glinting off the metal of the base, Mason's mind raced. Who did this? Why leave it here? And most importantly, what does 13-7 mean? Before he could dwell on it, Hale's voice snapped him back. "Briggs, look at your hands." Mason glanced down. Faint smudges were on his palms, black as the number beneath the barrel. He touched it, and a chill ran up his spine. Hale's eyes met his, wide, unblinking, full of a fear Mason had never seen before. "This doesn't come off," Hale said, almost whispering. "And now they know you found it." Mason's stomach dropped. The morning had started like any other, fixing weapons, checking supplies, running drills. And now he wasn't sure if he was about to survive the day. And in that moment, the world he thought he knew, the world of codes, weapons, and SEAL protocols, suddenly felt like a trap. The service truck barreled down the winding gravel roads at the edge of the base, the Barrett .50 cal wrapped tightly in canvas between Mason and Chief Hale. The morning sun glared harshly through the windshield, but it couldn't pierce the storm brewing in Mason's mind. His hands trembled slightly, though he tried to mask it by gripping the edge of his seat. Every instinct screamed that they were being watched, and the lingering chill on his palms, the same black smudge from the number beneath the barrel, felt like a mark of something far older and more dangerous than he had ever encountered. Hale hadn't spoken since the alarm had blared. Normally, the chief was a man of few words, but his silence now carried weight, as if he were calculating every possibility while preparing for something Mason couldn't yet see. Every turn of the truck, every passing shadow, made Mason more aware that someone, or something, knew exactly where they were. Finally, Hale spoke, his voice low but steady, cutting through the oppressive tension. "Briggs, you have to understand something. That rifle isn't just a weapon." He kept his eyes on the road, but Mason noticed the faint tightening around his jaw, the subtle flicker in his eyes that betrayed fear. "It's a message. Whoever put it here wanted it found, and now we are part of it." Mason swallowed hard. "A message to who?" His voice shook slightly. "Is it a threat or a trap?" Hale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowed the truck and cast a glance over his shoulder, scanning the surrounding tree line. The wind rustled through the branches, but nothing moved. Yet Mason could feel it, like the forest itself was holding its breath. "This isn't about a single threat," Hale finally said, voice barely audible over the engine. "It's bigger than that, and it's older than you think. 13-7, that number isn't random. It wasn't meant to be seen. Whoever left that rifle knew exactly who would find it and exactly what it would do once discovered." Mason's pulse quickened. "But Chief, it's just a number, a serial. How can that carry all of this?" Hale's eyes darkened. "Numbers like this aren't just codes, Briggs. They're history, they're lineage. They're death notices if you don't respect them." His voice carried the weight of someone who had witnessed the kind of darkness Mason had only read about in classified files. "That rifle belonged to a man who shouldn't even be alive, and now that you've handled it, the world just got smaller for us." The wind picked up, rattling the truck. Mason's thoughts raced. He had seen operatives disappear. He had read reports of black ops missions gone sideways. But nothing prepared him for the reality that a simple weapon, a scratched number under a barrel, could pull him into a vortex of secrets he didn't understand. Before Mason could formulate another question, Hale's hand shot to the radio. "Command, this is Hale. I need immediate intel on an unauthorized retrieval from the armory." His voice was calm but firm, the kind of authority that brooked no argument. Mason listened, hopping for guidance, but what came back chilled him to the bone. "No records found. All files pertaining to Barrett serials 13-7 scrubbed from the system. Repeat, all files erased." Mason froze. He had imagined things disappearing from digital logs before, but the sheer scale of what they were facing was staggering. "Erased? Everything?" His voice cracked. How is that even possible?" Hale's grip on the wheel tightened. "Not erased, purged. Someone went a great lengths to make sure no one, even the most cleared personnel, could trace this rifle. It's as if it never existed. Briggs, that means the people behind this don't just control weapons, they control reality." Mason swallowed, his throat dry. "Then if it's purged, how do we know anything? How do we even start?" Hale's gaze was sharp now, piercing Mason as though trying to imprint a lesson onto his very soul. "We start by surviving." He exhaled slowly, eyes flicking to the road. The moment someone knows you found that rifle, they come for you. And Mason, some of the people after this aren't bound by any law we know. Not military, not civilian, nothing. The truck dipped into a narrow clearing. Mason's eyes flicked to the sides. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, twisting in the sunlight. Hale slowed again, pointing to a dirt trail that led away from the main road. "We go off-grid," he said, voice tight. "There's a place, old, abandoned, and off any modern maps. If we're going to figure this out, it's there." Mason nodded, but unease gnawed at him. "Chief, if this is a trap, if they're tracking us—" "They are," Hale interrupted sharply. "And we have to assume they're always one step ahead. That's why you keep your head down, and your hands clean." He flicked a glance at Mason, and Mason noticed the faint black smudge still clinging to his skin. Hale's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Mason saw something he'd never seen in the chief before: fear. The forest grew denser as they drove, sunlight filtering through thick canopy, casting jagged shadows across the windshield. Mason could hear his own heartbeat, each thump echoing the growing dread in his chest. Hale's truck rumbled over loose gravel, and Mason's mind kept returning to the rifle. The scratched number, faint and deliberate, felt alive under his skin. "What happens if they catch us?" Mason asked, voice low, almost a whisper. Hale didn't answer immediately. His jaw clenched as he navigated a tight curve. "Then we find out how fast a rifle can kill not just the target but everyone who touches it. And believe me, Briggs, that number is a calling card. The moment someone sees it, they know. They know exactly who holds it. And if they come," he exhaled, voice rough, "then we fight until we can't anymore." Mason swallowed hard. The weight of Hale's words pressed down on him, heavier than the Barrett in the back seat. He had faced ambushes, firefights, and death-defying operations, but nothing had ever felt this personal, this intimate, this inescapable. The rifle wasn't just a weapon, it was a harbinger, a dark echo of events he wasn't yet prepared to understand. As the truck approached a clearing at the edge of the forest, Hale slowed to a crawl. Mason scanned the trees. The stillness was unnatural, too still. Not even birds stirred in the branches. Mason felt the unmistakable prickling sensation of being observed. His instincts screamed that they weren't alone. "Chief," Mason whispered, "do you feel that?" Hale didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a compact, unmarked tablet. He tapped it rapidly, eyes darting to the screen. "I've been tracking movements near the armory. Whoever left the Barrett, they're professional, calculated. They've already anticipated our steps. And this," he gestured toward Mason, "is the first domino. Once you touched that number, they were alerted." Mason's heart raced. "They're like ghosts." Hale didn't smile. "Worse, they're the ones who decide which ghosts live and which ones die, and now we're in their sights." Suddenly, the tablet beeped. A live feed appeared, grainy but unmistakable. A figure standing at the edge of the armory perimeter, watching them with unblinking eyes. Even in the distorted feed, Mason could feel the intensity, the patience, the deadly calm. Hale's jaw tightened. "They know." His voice was a whisper now, almost lost in the wind. "And they're waiting." Mason's palms grew sweaty. He looked down at the smudge again, black against his skin, and realized that whatever this number meant, whatever it represented, it wasn't just history, it was active, living, breathing, and now it was tied to him. Hale glanced over his shoulder, eyes scanning the shadows where the forest met the gravel road. "Briggs, welcome to a world where even numbers can hunt you. And 13-7, that's the start." Mason's stomach twisted. He wanted to ask how far this rabbit hole went. He wanted to question, to plan, to prepare. But deep down, he knew it was too late. The moment they discovered the rifle, they had stepped into a game they didn't understand. A game with stakes higher than anything Mason had ever faced. As the truck disappeared into the shadows of the thick forest, Mason's thoughts churned with one relentless question. Who was 13-7? And what would they do when they realized we had found him? And in that silence, amidst the trees and the whispering wind, Mason felt it, a presence. Watching, waiting, calculating. The hunt had begun. The service truck rumbled along a narrow dirt trail, veering deeper into the forest. Mason's hands were still damp from the smudge of black under the Barrett's barrel, a mark that seemed to cling to his skin like a warning. Hale drove with methodical precision, glancing occasionally at Mason, whose every muscle tensed as if the rifle's weight alone could summon danger. "Listen carefully, Briggs," Hale said, breaking the tense silence. "Once we're at the facility, nothing is standard. Nothing is normal. You follow my lead. No questions unless it's a matter of life or death." Mason swallowed hard, his pulse hammering. He had trained for combat, ambushes, and urban warfare, but he had never faced something like this. An invisible threat that could move through shadows, through records, through technology, and now through men. The old facility Hale was steering toward had been abandoned years ago, left to decay after budget cuts and administrative restructuring. But Hale's knowledge of the base's hidden corridors, forgotten maintenance tunnels, and sealed rooms suggested this place was more than it appeared. It was a secret within a secret, a perfect hiding spot for someone or something that didn't want to be found. When the truck finally stopped, Mason noticed the perimeter cameras were offline. Dust motes floated in the shafts of sunlight piercing the cracked windows. The place smelled of rust, mold, and disuse, a tomb for forgotten machinery. Hale stepped out first, moving like a shadow, and Mason followed, the Barrett wrapped tightly in canvas in his hands. Hale led Mason through a narrow hallway lined with peeling paint and flickering fluorescent lights. "We need to access the central intel room," he said quietly. "There's a file, or there was. If it's still here, it will tell us something about 13-7. Mason nodded, though he felt a gnawing unease. Wasn't there already enough danger? Yet he followed Hale's lead, gripping the rifle as if its weight could somehow shield him. They reached the intel room, a small, windowless space filled with old terminals and filing cabinets. Hale keyed in his credentials, his hands moving over the console with precision. "Pull up all records on the decommissioned Barrett line," he instructed. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed the tension beneath. The terminal beeped and hummed, green and red lights flashing, indicating the system was searching. Mason watched as lines of code scrolled rapidly across the screen, the digital hum echoing in the cramped room. The seconds stretched, each one heavier than the last. Then the screen froze. A single line of text blinked ominously. "No records found." Mason's stomach dropped. What does that mean?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. Hale's jaw tightened. "It means someone erased it, scrubbed it, gone completely." He turned to Mason, his eyes dark. "Everything pertaining to 13-7, Briggs, purged from the system. That's not happenstance. That's professional and dangerous." Mason swallowed hard. He had read stories of files being deleted, but never with such precision and intent. Someone didn't just want the rifle gone. They wanted the existence of 13-7 erased from history. And now he held the rifle. They knew. Hale's gaze shifted to the filing cabinets lining the wall. "If the digital logs are gone, the physical archives are our only option. Pull them open. Check every drawer." The young Army analyst accompanying them hesitated, then obeyed. He rifled through folders frantically, the paper rustling under his fingers, his eyes scanning labels and codes. He stopped suddenly, staring at an empty drawer. "Sir, this one," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "It was full yesterday. Now it's empty." Hale's eyes narrowed. "All of it." "All of it." The analyst swallowed, glancing nervously at the rifle in Mason's hands. Every file relating to the Barrett line, purged, removed, nothing left. Mason's stomach twisted. This wasn't just about secrecy anymore. This was about erasing history, and erasing history meant erasing proof. Then, without warning, the lights in the room flickered violently. Mason and Hale both froze. The monitors went black. Then, in a slow, deliberate sequence, New text appeared across the main console. 13-7 LOCATED. Mason's throat went dry. His hands tightened on the Barrett. Hale's normally unshakable face paled, the briefest hint of fear flashing in his eyes. "They know," Hale muttered. "They know we have it." A low, humming vibration filled the room, subtle but insistent. The metal filing cabinets groaned, as if reacting to the presence of the rifle. Mason could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy, pressing against his chest. It was as if the building itself was aware that the secret had been uncovered. Hale moved quickly, grabbing Mason's shoulder. "We leave. Now, don't argue, don't hesitate. The moment someone discovers the rifle's location, they'll move fast, too fast for us to anticipate." Mason obeyed, adrenaline flooding his system. They hurried out of the intel room, leaving the analyst behind to follow orders once Hale radioed him with further instructions. Mason's mind raced. Who could have that kind of reach? Who can erase digital and physical evidence so completely that it's like we're living in a ghost world? As they stepped into the shadowed hallway, Hale pressed his hand against Mason's arm. "Listen carefully. Whoever is behind this, they're more than a threat. They're a system. They've been hiding in plain sight, manipulating operations, erasing records, and waiting for someone to stumble onto the rifle. That someone is us." Mason's pulse throbbed painfully. "A system?" he asked. "You mean an organization?" "Not just any organization," Hale said, his voice lowered to a whisper. "Black ops, off the books, operatives with authority, resources, and reach that defies conventional tracking. They've been cleaning up traces of this rifle for years, and now we've activated them." Mason's stomach sank. He had faced ambushes, firefights, and missions that pushed human limits, but nothing had ever made him feel this powerless. Holding the Barrett felt like holding a ticking bomb, one that could detonate their lives at any moment. Suddenly, the distant sound of a vehicle echoed through the hallway. Hale stiffened, motioning for Mason to crouch behind a set of lockers. Dust drifted through the beam of sunlight from a cracked window, particles dancing like tiny specters. The sound grew closer. Mason's breath hitched. Was it a patrol? Or someone else? Someone watching? Hale's eyes scanned the shadows, every muscle coiled like a spring. The rifle felt impossibly heavy in Mason's hands, the black mark beneath the barrel a constant reminder that they were not just in danger, they were being hunted. Then, as quickly as it had started, the sound vanished. Silence returned, heavier than before, broken only by the faint hum of the aged fluorescent lights. Mason's palms were slick with sweat, the black smudge seemingly glowing under the harsh light. Hale's voice cut through the tension, low and firm. "Briggs, you need to remember something. This rifle isn't just metal and wood, it's the key. Whoever controlled 13-7, whoever is still out there, they've built a network. They're precise, efficient, and they will come for us. You touch that number and the game begins." Mason's mouth went dry. "Then what do we do?" Hale didn't answer immediately. He glanced at the rifle, then back at Mason, his eyes cold but calculating. "We survive, we gather information, and we prepare for the moment they make their move, because trust me," his jaw tightened. "They're already moving, and if we hesitate even for a second, it'll be too late." Mason's mind spun. Every scenario he could imagine ended with them cornered, exposed, or worse. He thought about the black smudge, the vanished files, and the ominous message on the console. Every instinct screamed danger, yet Hale's presence offered a small anchor of calm in the storm. Then, before Mason could respond, Hale's tablet beeped again. A live feed appeared, a grainy figure standing at the edge of the perimeter, barely visible among the trees. Mason's stomach twisted. Even in the low resolution, the figure radiated intent, focus, and lethal precision. Hale's lips pressed into a thin line. "They've found us," he said, voice steady but low. "And this is only the beginning." Mason gripped the rifle tighter, feeling the black smudge burn into his skin like a brand. The hunt had begun, and they were the prey. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the sense of unseen eyes and silent footsteps. Mason realized with chilling clarity that the world he thought he knew, the world of rules, protocols, and black-and-white operations, had collapsed. All that remained was shadows, numbers, and the inevitability of confrontation. And 13-7 was waiting. The service truck slipped silently through the dense forest, Hale's hands gripping the wheel like steel. Mason held the Barrett close, canvas covering its polished barrel, yet it felt alive in his hands, an almost imperceptible vibration pulsing beneath his fingertips. Every instinct in Mason's body screamed that they weren't alone. The black smudge on his palms seemed to thrum, echoing the unease in his chest. Hale spoke without taking his eyes off the narrow dirt road ahead. "We need to go off-grid, Briggs. The longer we stay on a known path, the easier it is for them to track us." Mason nodded, though his heart raced. Off-grid meant isolation, but it also meant vulnerability. Whoever was hunting them could strike from any angle at any moment. The rifle wasn't just a weapon, it was a signal, a summons, and now they were marked. As the truck wound deeper into the forest, a glint of white appeared ahead. Mason's stomach lurched. "Chief, look, there's a vehicle up ahead." Hale's eyes narrowed. "I see it." He slowed the truck to a crawl. Ahead, a white pickup sat motionless, dust-covered, engine idling. No plates, tinted windows, nothing to identify it. It was the kind of vehicle that belonged in nightmares, anonymous, silent, and ominous. The truck lurched slightly as Hale brought it to a stop a few dozen meters from the white pickup. Mason could make out a figure emerging from the driver's side. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with deliberate, slow precision. A gray hoodie covered his upper body, and a ball cap hid his face in shadow. Mason couldn't see his eyes, but he felt them. Watching. Calculating. Hale leaned slightly toward Mason. "Do you know him?" he whispered. Mason shook his head slowly, tension knotting his shoulders. "No, I don't." The man didn't approach. He didn't wave or speak. He simply stood, motionless, observing the truck. Mason felt a cold prickle crawl down his spine, the sensation of being hunted by something intelligent, patient, and lethal. Hale's hand hovered near his sidearm, a subtle yet unmistakable sign of readiness. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then, the man lifted a hand, pointing directly at the canvas-wrapped Barrett in the truck bed. Mason's grip tightened. Every hair on his body stood on end. "Chief, he wants the rifle," Mason whispered, voice barely audible. Hale didn't flinch. His eyes, dark and calculating, remained on the figure. "He can't have it," Hale said calmly, but the slight tremor in his jaw betrayed him. The man took a slow step forward, and then another. Each movement measured, controlled, like a predator circling its prey. Mason's chest tightened. He had been in ambushes, firefights, and close-quarters operations, yet nothing compared to this, something invisible, yet undeniable. Hale exhaled through his nose, a soft hiss. "Briggs, we're not going to engage unless forced. Stay calm, stay quiet." Mason nodded, though his body refused to obey entirely. His hands shook as they rested on the canvas, feeling the weight of the rifle as though it had become a living extension of danger. The man stopped a dozen meters from the truck, tilting his head slightly. Then, without warning, he disappeared. Mason's pulse spiked. "Chief, where did he go?" Hale's eyes scanned the surrounding forest. "He vanished," Hale said flatly. "But don't think he's gone. He knows we're here. He knows what we're carrying." Mason swallowed hard. How does someone just vanish like that? Hale's expression hardened. "Precision, training, patience. You don't get to this level by making mistakes, and you certainly don't survive by leaving traces behind. Whoever he is, he's been watching for a long time, too long." Mason's mind raced. He had faced enemies before, men who hid in buildings, behind corners in the shadows, but nothing like this. Nothing who could vanish into thin air, seemingly untouchable, watching their every move. And now they were trapped in the middle of nowhere, carrying a weapon that was a beacon for danger. Hale shifted the truck onto a narrow trail veering off the main path. "We're heading to a safe house," he said, voice clipped. "Old facility sealed off for years. No cameras, no patrols. If it's still intact, we can regroup, figure out what we're dealing with." Mason nodded, though unease gnawed at him. Safe house or not, whoever had left the Barrett knew the terrain, the paths, and the likely routes they would take. He felt trapped between survival and inevitability, each second dragging heavier than the last. As they drove, Hale spoke quietly, almost to himself. "Briggs, you need to understand the gravity of what we're dealing with. 13-7, that's not just a code, it's a designation for a man. One of the best SEAL snipers we ever had. Disappeared 4 years ago on a mission that was never officially sanctioned. Officially dead, unofficially a ghost. And that rifle," Hale gestured at the canvas, "was his signature." Mason's chest tightened. "Signature." Hale nodded, jaw set. "Every operator leaves a mark, Briggs. Sometimes it's a calling card. Sometimes it's a message. 13-7 was Royce Kellen. And if that man or someone connected to him wants that rifle, they won't stop until they get it back." Mason's stomach dropped. "So, the man in the truck." Hale's eyes narrowed. "We don't know if he's Royce. We don't know if he's friend or foe, but he's highly trained, he's patient, and he's dangerous. And he's here. Now." The forest grew thicker, shadows lengthening as the sun climbed higher. The truck rattled over roots and stones, each jolt amplifying Mason's growing panic. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, every rustle of leaves, every bird call, every snapping twig setting his nerves on edge. Then, without warning, a shot rang out in the distance, a single deafening crack that echoed through the forest. The truck rocked from the vibration, Mason instinctively diving low, gripping the canvas tighter. Hale's eyes flicked to the source. "Warning," he muttered. "They're testing us. They know we have the rifle." Another shot rang out, closer this time. Mason's stomach lurched. The forest seemed alive with sound, each echo feeding a growing terror. Hale slammed the truck into a shallow ditch for cover, mud spraying over the tires. Mason's heart raced as Hale pressed a finger to his lips. "Stay down," Hale whispered. "They're watching, calculating. They'll strike again if we give them a reason." Mason's chest heaved. He had trained for ambushes, but the methodical patience, the intelligence behind these attacks, was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Each movement, each decision, seemed anticipated, predicted. They were not just facing a man. They were facing a mind that had already calculated every possible outcome. Minutes passed in tense silence. Mason's ears strained for any sign of movement. The smudge on his palms seemed to burn hotter with each passing second, a reminder of the number beneath the barrel, the calling card, the threat. Finally, Hale exhaled slowly. "We move, now." He threw the truck into gear, swerving back onto the dirt trail, eyes scanning the forest for any trace of the white pickup. But it was gone, vanished without a trace, like smoke dispersing into the wind. Mason's pulse didn't slow. The threat had not disappeared, it had merely withdrawn, watching, waiting. He realized with icy clarity that they were being hunted. The rifle was more than a weapon, it was bait, a signal, a key to a hidden game. Hale glanced at Mason, eyes hard. "Briggs, that was your first encounter. The man in the truck, he knows your name. He knows what you're holding, and he will come again. And next time, it won't be a warning." Mason swallowed hard, gripping the Barrett tighter. He realized then that the forest, the safe house, the trail, they were all illusions of control. They were in the middle of a living, breathing trap, and every second of hesitation could be fatal. As the truck disappeared deeper into the shadows, Mason's mind raced with a single, terrifying thought. They know, and the hunt has only just begun. The old safe house sat at the edge of a forgotten logging road, half hidden by overgrown pines and the shadows of abandoned machinery. Hale brought the truck to a careful stop, engine ticking as it cooled, and Mason exhaled shakily, his palms still slick from the black smudge beneath the Barrett's barrel. Every fiber of his body was tense, every nerve screaming that the danger was far from over. Hale didn't speak immediately. He surveyed the perimeter with a trained eye, every glance calculated, every sense alert. Mason could feel the weight of the rifle pressing against his chest, not just the physical heft but the significance of it. 13-7 wasn't just a number anymore. It was a summons, a warning, and a puzzle he had no answers for. Finally, Hale broke the silence. "Briggs, this is it. Safe House Alpha, long abandoned. No cameras, no patrols, no electronic footprints. It's our only chance to regroup." Mason followed Hale inside, the building creaking under their weight. Dust and debris lined the floor, cobwebs in every corner, the stale scent of neglect heavy in the air. Yet even here, Mason could feel the presence of something else, something deliberate, something patient. Hale moved to the back of the room and pressed a hidden latch under a cabinet. The wall groaned and shifted, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Mason's breath caught. "You've used this before." Hale shook his head. "Only once, years ago. No one knows it exists but me, and now us." He gestured for Mason to descend first, keeping the rifle ready. "Stay alert. This isn't just about hiding, it's about surviving." The staircase led to a subterranean bunker, walls lined with old steel lockers and reinforced with concrete. The lighting was dim but sufficient to see the essentials: a metal table, chairs, and a terminal connected to a battery-powered generator. Hale keyed in a sequence on the terminal, and a soft hum filled the room. "This terminal hasn't been online in over a decade," Hale said, eyes scanning the data. "But if anyone has left digital traces about 13-7, it will show here." Mason's stomach tightened. "And if they've covered their tracks like before?" Hale's jaw set. "Then we rely on instincts and old-school intel." He gestured toward a metal cabinet. Mason opened it cautiously, revealing stacks of yellowed files, each labeled meticulously with codes and annotations. "Royce Kellen," Hale muttered, pausing as he thumbed through the files. Mason leaned closer, reading the name silently. Hale's eyes flicked up. "That's 13-7. Mason froze. "So he's alive?" Hale nodded grimly. "Officially, no. Unofficially, yes. Royce was a SEAL sniper assigned to black ops missions that never saw the light of day, precise, lethal, ghost-like, and this rifle, it's his signature." Mason's pulse spiked. "Signature." Hale's lips pressed into a thin line. "Every operator leaves a mark. Royce's was the Barrett .50 cal, a weapon so precise, so rare, that no one else could handle it with the same efficiency. And that number, 13-7, it was his calling card, the message he left behind in every operation." Mason swallowed hard. "Then the man in the truck?" Hale shook his head. "We don't know if it's him. Could be an operative connected to him, could be Royce himself. But whoever it is, he's lethal, patient, and now aware of us. And once aware, there's no turning back." Mason's mind raced. He had trained for firefights, ambushes, and missions that pushed him to his limits. But this was different. They were being hunted by someone who didn't just anticipate movements, they anticipated thought, instinct, and reaction. Suddenly, a soft beep emanated from the terminal. Hale's eyes narrowed. "Someone's pinging the network," he muttered. "Remote access. Could be a tracking device on the rifle, could be a signal from the person watching us." Mason's stomach turned. "So they're in the bunker." "Not physically yet," Hale said. "But they know we're here, and they know we have the rifle. That means they're calculating, waiting, planning." Mason felt a shiver run down his spine. Every training exercise, every simulation he had ever endured, did not prepare him for this. An invisible, omnipresent threat, patient and precise, tracking them in real time. Hale moved to a locker and pulled out a photo. Mason leaned closer. It was a faded image of a man in full SEAL gear, the face partially obscured by shadow and night vision goggles. A sniper rifle rested in his hands. Beneath it, the number 137 was scrawled in faint ink. "That's him," Hale said softly. "Royce Kellen, the man we've been chasing without knowing it, and now he's chasing us." Mason's chest tightened. But why? Why the rifle? Why the number? Hale's eyes darkened. Because Royce never dies quietly, he leaves a trail. Every mission he undertakes, every target he engages, there's a pattern, a message. And that rifle, it's the anchor. Whoever has it becomes part of the message. And now that someone is us. Mason's fingers brushed the canvas. The black smudge beneath the barrel seemed to burn hotter. He realized then that this was more than a weapon. It was a key, a summons, a burden he could not escape. Suddenly, a low vibration hummed through the floor, a signal alert from the terminal. Hale's eyes narrowed. "They're coming," he said, voice tight, "and they know exactly where we are." Mason's heart raced. How fast? Hale's gaze hardened. "Fast enough to hit us before we finish breathing." He moved to a hidden panel and keyed in a code. A section of the bunker wall slid open, revealing an emergency exit. Mason followed, gripping the Barrett tightly, every muscle coiled. They emerged into a narrow tunnel leading further underground. Hale's flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating dust particles that hung in the air like frozen time. Mason's breath echoed, loud in the confined space. "They'll test us first," Hale whispered. "The man in the white truck, if it's Royce, he won't rush. He'll probe, gauge, calculate. We survive his tests, we might survive him." Mason's pulse thundered. He gripped the rifle, feeling the weight of history, danger, and responsibility pressing down on him. Every second in this tunnel was a countdown. Every shadow, every creak, every whisper of wind was a potential threat. Suddenly, a faint sound, a scrape of metal against stone, echoed from the far end of the tunnel. Mason froze, heart pounding. Hale's eyes flicked to the sound. "Stay sharp," he murmured. "It begins." A shadow moved in the darkness. A figure, tall and deliberate, emerged from the gloom. Mason's breath caught. The hoodie and cap were unmistakable. The man in the white truck, or Royce himself, stood before them. Hale's hand hovered near his sidearm. Mason's fingers tightened around the Barrett. The figure raised a hand, slow, deliberate, and pointed directly at the rifle. The message was clear, he knew. Mason realized then, with icy certainty, that the hunt was no longer about survival. It was about proving who could control the narrative, who could survive the game. And in that moment, he understood the chilling truth. They were no longer hunters. They were prey. The figure stepped closer and Mason's stomach twisted. Every instinct screamed to act, but Hale placed a hand on his shoulder, firm and commanding. "Wait," Hale whispered. "Watch, learn, survive." Mason's eyes never left the figure. Every movement, every calculated step, every shadow cast in the flickering flashlight light spoke of a mind sharper, faster, and colder than anything he had encountered. And as the figure paused, just out of reach, Mason realized the terrifying truth. 137 wasn't just a number, he was a ghost. And now he was in the room with them. The tunnel smelled of damp concrete and rust, shadows twisting unnaturally under the beam of Hale's flashlight. Mason tightened his grip on the Barrett, the black smudge beneath the barrel feeling hotter than ever. His mind raced, replaying every detail from the past hours: the white pickup, the vanished files, the relentless presence of the hunter in the forest. Now, face to face with a figure he could barely see, the reality of the threat pressed down like lead. The figure, tall, broad, moving with lethal precision, paused, the darkness obscuring his face. Mason's instincts screamed at him to act, to strike first, but Hale's hand on his shoulder held him back. "Wait," Hale whispered. "Watch, learn, survive." The figure's head tilted slightly, then a faint click echoed in the tunnel. Mason's pulse spiked. A silencer, a trigger. Hale stiffened, every muscle coiled, eyes scanning the darkness for any movement. "You have it," the voice finally came, low, measured, almost impossibly calm. Mason's stomach dropped. It was Royce Kellen. Every instinct screamed recognition. This was the man the military had declared dead, the sniper who had haunted Black Ops missions like a ghost, the man who owned 13-7. Hale's jaw tightened. "Then you know who we are," Royce said, stepping fully into the light now. His face, shadowed under the cap, revealed nothing but cold calculation. Every line, every scar, every hardened feature spoke of experience, danger, and lethal precision. Mason's heart raced. Why the rifle?" he managed, voice shaking slightly. Royce's eyes narrowed. "It's mine," he said simply, "and you've handled it without permission. That makes you a liability." His hand hovered near his own weapon, barely visible under the folds of his jacket. "No one touches 13-7 without consequence." Mason swallowed hard. He realized the full gravity of what they were facing. This was no longer a pursuit, it was a confrontation. The rifle had summoned its owner, and now Royce Kellen stood between them and safety. Hale stepped forward slightly. "We don't want to fight," he said calmly, voice steady. "We're here to understand, to survive." Royce's lips curved faintly, almost imperceptibly. "Survival isn't a matter of choice here," he said. "It's a matter of timing and control." Mason felt his stomach twist. The words weren't a threat, they were a declaration. Royce controlled the space, the tension, and every potential outcome. Every instinct Mason had screamed that the slightest misstep could be fatal. Then, as if testing their reactions, Royce moved, a calculated step to the side, slow, deliberate, almost hypnotic. Mason followed instinctively, but Hale's hand gripped his arm. "Don't follow, let him move." Another click echoed. Mason froze, realizing the sound came not from Royce but from the floor. Pressure-sensitive triggers, mines, or some other trap left behind in the long-abandoned safe house. Every instinct screamed danger, but Hale's calm presence provided a fragile anchor. Royce spoke again, voice low, like a blade sliding through air. "You have something that belongs to me, and until it's returned, you exist on borrowed time." His eyes locked onto Mason, piercing, calculating, predatory. "Every movement you make, every breath you take, I will anticipate. Every mistake will be punished." Mason felt a cold sweat bead on his forehead. He gripped the rifle tighter. "So, what do we do?" Hale's eyes scanned the tunnel, looking for exits, cover, anything. "We survive. We don't engage. We retreat, regroup, and figure out our next move. That's all we can do." Royce's lips tightened into a thin line. Retreat? Interesting. Most would have frozen in fear. Most would have made a fatal error by now. His gaze flicked to the rifle. "You don't understand the gravity of what you hold. That weapon, it's more than metal. It's a key. And now you are part of a game you don't comprehend." Mason's mind raced. A game? With stakes like this, the rules are lethal. He could feel the tension pressing against him, the way the shadows seemed to stretch closer, the silence waiting to snap like a wire. Royce took another step forward. Mason and Hale instinctively moved back, careful not to trigger any hidden devices. The floor beneath them groaned softly, dust and small debris shifting under the subtle movement. "You think you can hide here," Royce said. His voice was soft, yet every word carried authority. "You are exposed. Every corner, every shadow, I have already accounted for, and the moment you make a mistake, I will be there." Mason's chest tightened. He realized then that Royce wasn't just a man, he was a presence, a force, an intelligence honed for survival, calculation, and lethal precision. The rifle wasn't just a weapon, it was the tether connecting them to this hunter, this ghost from a past no one could escape. Hale's hand moved slightly toward his sidearm, subtle, precise. "Briggs, stay calm. Don't provoke. Let him make the first move. We survive the first strike." Royce tilted his head slightly. "You think you have time? You think you can outmaneuver me in this confined space? The rifle was never meant to be kept. It was meant to be returned, or consequences follow." His eyes glittered with an almost inhuman intensity. Then, without warning, a soft click came from the shadows. Mason's head snapped toward it, and in the same instant, a laser dot flickered across the wall near Hale's shoulder. Mason's pulse spiked. They're ready to strike. Royce's voice was calm, almost conversational. Consider this a warning shot, a test. If you respond incorrectly, the next will not miss. Mason felt every muscle in his body tighten. This was no longer a negotiation. Every instinct screamed fight or flight, yet both options carried lethal consequences. The tension in the bunker was suffocating, the shadows alive with anticipation. Hale exhaled slowly. We don't respond, we move, now. He gestured toward a narrow side tunnel. Mason followed, gripping the Barrett, moving silently, each step calculated. Royce's gaze followed them, unblinking, every detail accounted for. As they slipped deeper into the tunnel, Mason realized with chilling clarity. The first strike was only the beginning. Royce had tested them, gauged their reactions, and set the stage for what would come next. Every moment of hesitation, every misstep, every instinctive reaction had been observed, catalogued, and willfully noted. The weight of the rifle pressed against his chest. The black smudge beneath the barrel seemed to burn hotter with every heartbeat. Mason knew then that they were no longer just participants. They were pawns in a lethal, calculating game controlled by Royce Kellen. And the hunter had only begun. Outside, the shadows of the forest pressed close to the bunker's entrance. Every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call, every crackling branch could be the prelude to the next strike. Mason's stomach twisted. They are patient, and they are coming. Hale's voice broke the silence, quiet but commanding. Briggs, remember this. Survival isn't about bullets or weapons. It's about patience, calculation, and endurance. Royce Kellen is more than a man, he's a force. And if we make it through this, it will be because we outthink him, not outgun him. Mason swallowed hard, gripping the Barrett tighter. He felt the weight of responsibility, danger, and history converge in that single, tense moment. The first strike had passed, but the real battle was just beginning. And in the shadows of the bunker, Royce Kellen waited, calculating the moment when the next strike would fall. The subterranean tunnel stretched ahead like a wound in the earth, shadows pressing against every inch of Mason's consciousness. His hands ached from gripping the Barrett, the black smudge under the barrel now almost searing his skin. A constant reminder that 13-7 was not just a number but a living threat, binding him to something he could neither escape nor fully understand. Hale moved ahead with his usual calm precision, yet Mason could sense the tension in the chief's muscles, the subtle tightening in his jaw that betrayed a rare crack in his otherwise unshakable demeanor. Every step they took was deliberate. Dust shifted underfoot, the echoes of their movement bouncing off the concrete walls. Mason's pulse thundered in his ears, and he kept stealing glances at the shadows that seemed to shift with unnatural intelligence. Royce Kellen had tested them once, and now he would watch them retreat, waiting for the precise moment to strike. Hale paused at a junction in the tunnel, holding up a finger. Briggs, listen. Royce isn't just fast, he's methodical. Every move you make, every instinct you follow, he has anticipated. The first strike was his assessment. The next— Hale let the sentence hang in the stale air, heavy with implication. Mason swallowed hard. He had seen lethal operators before, men who could neutralize threats with precision and efficiency. But Royce wasn't merely a threat. He was a predator who had perfected the art of psychological warfare, patience, and foresight. Suddenly, a faint vibration ran under Mason's boots. The floor shuddered as if alive, imperceptible yet undeniably present. Hale froze, scanning the walls and ceiling. Mason's stomach twisted. Tripwire, he whispered. Worse, Hale muttered. Sensors, pressure pads, heat signatures. He knows we're here and he's prepared for us. Every step, every second calculated. A soft, almost imperceptible hum began to echo through the tunnel. Mason's throat tightened. What is that? Hale shook his head. A warning. Royce doesn't waste resources. He doesn't strike until the moment is perfect. This hum, it's patience. It's anticipation. It's telling us we're playing in his game now on his terms. Mason's grip on the rifle tightened. He realized that their every instinct was now a weapon and a potential liability. One misstep, one thoughtless movement, and they would be at Royce's mercy. As they advanced cautiously, Mason noticed a faint greenish light flickering down a side passage. Hale held up a hand. That's a security measure. Cameras or laser grids. Royce sets traps, even in abandoned facilities. He leaves breadcrumbs for you to follow, mistakes for you to make. Don't touch anything. Mason nodded, heart pounding, as they carefully navigated around the faint glow. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to move in a single file. The weight of the Barrett felt suffocating now, each step a reminder that this weapon, this number, tied them irrevocably to a living ghost. Suddenly the lights flickered and a low metallic groan echoed through the tunnel. Mason froze. Hale's hand went to his sidearm, eyes scanning the darkness ahead. Then a voice, soft, almost casual, cut through the air. "Impressive. You've made it this far without triggering my first real trap." Mason's stomach dropped. "Royce." The voice was calm, precise, and everywhere at once, echoing through the tunnel, distorting, impossible to pinpoint. Hale's lips pressed into a thin line. "Stay calm," he whispered. "Every reaction you have, every second you hesitate, he's analyzing." The hum intensified, and Mason felt a subtle pressure against his chest, as though the tunnel itself had become a living entity, responding to Royce's will. A panel slid open along the wall, revealing a complex arrangement of wires, sensors, and devices, clearly an active mechanism designed to detect, warn, or potentially neutralize intruders. Royce's voice echoed again, amused, patient. "You handle the weapon well, strong grip, good posture, steady breathing. But tell me, can you handle the man behind it?" Mason's stomach twisted. "We're not looking for a fight," he whispered to Hale. Hale shook his head, eyes never leaving the sensors. "Doesn't matter. He defines the battlefield. We just survive it." A sudden movement in the shadows caught Mason's eye. He instinctively raised the Barrett, scanning the darkness. A figure stepped out, no, not a figure, just a shadow, merging with the darkness so seamlessly that Mason questioned whether it was real. But then, the shadow moved with deliberate precision, circling them, watching, testing. "Every weapon has a story," Royce said, voice closer now. "Every operator leaves a legacy. And you are holding mine. That makes you responsible. That makes you my next puzzle." Mason's pulse raced. "A puzzle?" he whispered. "Yes," Royce replied, calm, deliberate, almost patronizing. "And every puzzle has consequences. Fail, and the cost is measured in blood." Hale's eyes narrowed. "We've seen the consequences, Briggs. We've been tested once. Stay sharp, every move counts." The hum escalated, then stopped suddenly. Silence descended, thick and suffocating. Mason realized that the tunnel itself seemed to hold its breath. And then, in a single, deliberate moment, the lights flickered back on, revealing a series of metal panels along the floor that hadn't been there before, pressure plates, spaced perfectly for human feet. Mason froze. One wrong step and he didn't want to imagine. Hale moved first, placing his foot with careful precision. "Follow me," he whispered. "Mimic my steps. Don't look around, don't think." Mason followed, each step a calculated gamble. The black smudge on his hands felt like a brand burning into his skin, a constant reminder that this was Royce's world now, and they were merely visitors. Halfway across the plates, Mason felt a subtle vibration beneath his foot, a warning. Hale's eyes met his, sharp, silent. Mason adjusted instantly, barely avoiding a potential trap. Every nerve in his body screamed with awareness. Finally, they reached the end of the plate sequence, breathing hard, hearts pounding. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, dimly lit, shadows clinging to every corner. Mason's eyes darted around. Every creak, every whisper of air felt amplified, like the building itself was listening. Royce stepped from the shadows, fully visible now, his presence dominating the room. Mason's pulse thundered. The man was lean, muscular, movement coiled and controlled, every inch a predator. The Barrett felt heavier in his hands, its significance undeniable. "You survived my first real test," Royce said, voice calm but carrying a weight that pressed down on Mason's chest. "Not many do. Not many even understand it's a test until it's too late. But you made it this far." Mason's voice shook slightly. What do you want?" Royce's eyes narrowed. "I want the rifle returned. I want the number respected. I want understanding. But most of all, I want to see if you can survive the next strike. Because now you are part of the game, and games are meant to be won or lost. There is no middle ground." Hale stepped beside Mason, hand hovering near his sidearm. "Briggs, stay calm. Watch, learn, survive. That's all we can do." Royce's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Good, I like that. Patience, awareness. Now the next test begins." Mason's stomach twisted. He realized with chilling clarity that survival was no longer a matter of firepower, skill, or courage alone. It was a matter of understanding the mind that hunted them and anticipating moves he could scarcely imagine. Outside the bunker, the shadows stretched long, the forest holding its breath, as if nature itself was aware that a lethal game had begun. And Mason knew in the core of his being that the real danger, the true strike, was yet to come. The chamber was silent, heavy with tension, the faint hum of the generator the only sound accompanying Mason and Hale as they faced Royce Kellen. Every shadow seemed to stretch toward them, twisting and bending under the dim light, as if even the walls of the bunker had been pulled into the predator's game. The weight of the Barrett .50 pressed against Mason's chest, not just physically, but with the enormity of what it represented: power, history, and danger incarnate. Royce's gaze was unyielding, razor-sharp. "You've made it this far," he said, voice calm but saturated with authority. "Few survive my games, fewer survive my tests, but the final challenge is not about reflexes, skill, or courage. It's about understanding, anticipation, control." Mason's pulse raced. "So what is it? What do we do?" Royce's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly, like a predator savoring the moment before the kill. "You survive," he said. "You prove you are worthy of handling 13-7, or you fail. There is no alternative. Every choice you make from this moment is observed, every instinct tested, every breath calculated." Hale exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders visible. "Briggs, remember, patience, observation, survival. Don't react before you understand." Royce stepped closer, deliberate, his movements fluid, lethal. Mason noticed the faintest twitch in his eyes, the way his fingers hovered near his concealed sidearm, ready to strike with precision. The man wasn't just skilled, he was a master of intimidation, anticipation, and psychological warfare. Without warning, Royce clapped his hands slowly, echoing through the chamber. The walls vibrated subtly. Metal plates slid open in hidden recesses, revealing an array of devices: pressure sensors, laser grids, and motion-triggered alarms. Mason realized then that every inch of the chamber had been prepared to trap them, to test not just their reflexes but their understanding of the environment itself. Royce's voice echoed again, almost casual. "The rifle isn't just a weapon, it's a key. Every operator leaves a legacy, and now you carry mine. That makes you accountable. That makes you a participant in a game you may not survive. Observe carefully." Mason's grip tightened on the Barrett. He felt the black smudge under the barrel burn like a brand. This is no longer a mission, he realized. This is a trial. One wrong move and everything ends. Hale moved slowly, mapping the chamber silently, every footfall deliberate. Mason mirrored him, every muscle tensed, every sense alert. Royce watched, eyes sharp, calculating, predicting their movements. Then, as if testing them further, Royce activated a mechanism. A series of laser grids flickered to life, crisscrossing the room. Mason froze, noting how the grids would have cut through flesh with deadly precision if they had moved carelessly. "Observe," Royce said, voice calm, almost soothing. "Predict, adapt, survive. Every action has a consequence, every hesitation a potential death sentence." Mason's breath caught. The rifle felt impossibly heavy now, not just in weight but in responsibility. Every instinct screamed to act, yet Hale's calm presence reminded him they were not to engage unless necessary. Survival demanded patience, not aggression. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint hum of the generator and Royce's measured breathing. Then he stepped closer, deliberately, forcing Mason and Hale into a corner of the chamber. "You have skills," Royce said, voice low and dangerous. "But can you think faster than you fear? Can you act faster than you hesitate?" A sudden click echoed. The floor beneath Mason shifted subtly, a pressure plate. Mason froze, realizing that one false step could trigger a lethal response. Hale's hand moved slightly, guiding Mason without words, his silent instruction clear: observe, calculate, survive. Royce's lips tightened. Good, control, awareness, patience, but the final test requires action. Mason's pulse thundered. Every nerve screamed danger. The shadowed walls seemed to close in. Royce's presence was suffocating, the air heavy with anticipation, yet the man moved slowly, almost ritualistically, testing, probing. Then suddenly, a small panel on the far side of the room slid open, revealing a secondary exit. Mason's mind raced. A trap, a lure, or the real way out. Every instinct told him danger lurked behind every option. Hale whispered, "Briggs, observe, predict, decide, but act only when you understand the risk." Mason nodded, gripping the Barrett tighter. His eyes flicked between the exit, Royce, and the laser grids crisscrossing the floor. Every movement counted. Every breath was a test. Royce stepped back slightly, creating distance. "This is your opportunity," he said, calm, deliberate. "Move through the path, avoid the triggers, prove that you are worthy of carrying 13-7, or fail." Mason's heart hammered. He calculated each step, timing, distance, and angle. Hale mirrored him, silent and precise. The laser grids hummed faintly, a silent warning. The pressure plates shifted subtly beneath their feet. Every step demanded concentration, patience, and nerve. They moved slow, deliberate, foot by foot. Mason could feel the sweat on his palms, the tension in his chest, the burning mark beneath the barrel. Time stretched, elongated, each second an eternity as they navigated the deadly maze. Royce watched, silent, calculating, predator and judge. Finally, after what felt like hours compressed into minutes, Mason and Hale reached the secondary exit without triggering any alarms. The chamber seemed to exhale, the laser grids retracting, the pressure sensors resetting. Royce stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "You survived the final test," he said quietly. "Few ever do. Few understand that the weapon you carry is more than metal. It is legacy, responsibility, burden, and now you are accountable." Mason's chest heaved. The rifle felt heavier than ever, the black smudge searing into his skin. He realized the gravity of Royce's words. They hadn't just survived a trap, they had been measured, weighed, and deemed worthy. Royce's eyes softened slightly, the first human warmth Mason had seen. "Do you understand?" he asked. "This isn't about bullets, it's about control, awareness, understanding. You carry 13-7 and with it comes knowledge and danger. You survive not by firing first, but by thinking first." Hale exhaled slowly, relief subtle but present. Mason nodded, voice tight. "We understand." Royce's gaze lingered on the rifle. "Good, now return it, preserve its legacy, or it will consume you." Mason carefully removed the canvas, lifting the Barrett and offering it to Royce. The man's hands closed around it, deliberate, reverent. For a moment, the chamber was silent except for their breathing. Then Royce spoke, voice low but final. "You have proven yourself, survived where most fail. Remember this lesson: patience, observation, and respect will always outmatch raw strength. Mason's stomach finally relaxed slightly, adrenaline still hammering. Hale patted his shoulder. "We made it," Hale whispered, almost in disbelief. "We survived him and the game." Royce lifted his eyes, scanning the chamber one last time. "Remember, 13-7 is more than a number. It is history, precision, and consequence. Guard it well." With that, he stepped back into the shadows, moving with the same ghost-like precision that had defined him from the beginning. Mason and Hale watched, knowing the hunter had vanished as suddenly as he had appeared. Outside the bunker, the forest stretched endless, sun piercing through the branches in long shafts of light. Mason exhaled, the weight of survival finally sinking in. The rifle was gone from his hands, but the lessons, the tension, and the knowledge of Royce Kellen's presence remained. They had survived the hunt. They had survived the game. And Mason realized that in this world, survival wasn't about strength. It was about anticipation, patience, and understanding the mind of the predator. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the lingering presence of a ghost. And Mason knew, with quiet certainty, that the story of 13-7 was far from over. For now the hunt had ended, but the shadow of Royce Kellen and the legacy of the Barrett .50 would always remain.